Okay, so I thought today we could do some character creation. And one thing that I like to do when I create characters is, of course, use the companion app, the Mothership one, and then also use Walks of Life as well, which looks like this. And Walks of Life is a 2-page pamphlet that that basically adds a little bit more like meat to the bones of the character creation process. So yeah, so let's go through that, and that could be a bit of fun. So to give a little bit more detail to Walks of Life, here in the module, it talks about, what it's good for. So you've got characters that are part of like a long-term campaign. So you can like really sort of start that process of asking yourself some questions about, okay, what's interesting about this character? What history do they have? And it's a good like starting point, and like a little bit extra than just creating a character within the companion app. Even if you're creating like a character for a one-shot, it can be quite good, especially if you expect a little bit of like play and things like that as well. So yeah, like extra backstory is really like the biggest thing here. And I personally find it really helpful when I have a little bit more backstory, because if you just give me a Marine with some skills and a trinket and a patch randomly, is that over time I've got better at sort of creating a character. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Sam. So this is Walks of Life, this supplement. So it's just a 2-pager. And so yeah, it's really useful. I love it. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to like move around and things like that. So if you've got any like anything that comes up, then feel free. I'm happy to answer. So yeah, extra backstory is the key thing. One of the biggest changes is how it handles androids. So with androids, if you're just creating one from the app, then like it doesn't really give you much context to that android. It's like, what is an android? It could be many different types of things, and especially in movies, it could be lots of different types as well. What am I prepping for? So I'm going to be a player this weekend for a game with my sort of like online group. And so I need to create a character for that. I might create like a backup for that, but I like creating characters, I'll be honest. So that's one aspect. And then prepping, there's one pamphlet that I'd like to like read a little bit more, which is this one, which is this "So You've Been Chump Dumped," which came as a recommendation when I like every so often I like post sort of like recommend me questions in the Mothership subreddit. So this came out of that. And then what else am I prepping? So I'll prep for this. So it's kind of like a backup, backup of something that I can run. And then what else? Yeah, I think those were like the main things I'm personally prepping for, things that I'm going to be either running or being a player in. But apart from that, yeah, I'm kind of interested in, there was a question in the subreddit for Mothership about like unconfirmed contact reports or something like this, and it talked about like have many people seen characters from this module, well, this like zine, to be honest, of lots of different characters, but there's not really like missions associated. It's just like here's some enemies that you might be interested in placing in a game, or maybe even creating a session around. So yeah, that's what I'm prepping for. That's what I've got sort of on my loose agenda today. Yeah, actually, you reminded me. I should put maybe put this on here. Otherwise, I will forget. Yeah, so to continue on, yeah, with androids, it doesn't treat Android as a class per se. It kind of treats Android more like a background. So you could have a Marine that is an android rather than an android by itself as a class. Yeah, just add some extra tools, and yeah, so this is what I'll do today, like generating some quick and interesting PCs rather than NPCs, which is just rolling a 1d20. So to get like a good picture of what this looks like, most of the backgrounds look like this. So you have like this activist, Android enthusiast, beneficiary, and each of them have a few like adjectives of what this person might be like. So it gives you like a good idea of like how you could play them, or what could be interesting about them, or it might affect how you role play them a little bit. But of course, it's whatever. Really, this is to like spark your imagination a little bit. So like I've used this table, like I used it for, I rolled a 15. So one character that I created was a socialite, technically. However, I ended up changing it completely because of the skills that they had. And so they wanted popularity, but they were chasing popularity, but they weren't getting it because they were basically this grumpy old man. Thanks, Waco. Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate your support, as I've told you before. I appreciate that so much. So yeah, thanks, dude. So this is Walks of Life, Waco. As you might have picked up, I'm not too sure when you joined, but this is one thing that I was actually going to walk you through a little bit at some point. So actually for Waco, hello. Hey, Melly, how are you? Do I have to put on like some like Australian accent or slang like to continue if you're here, or would you understand like a Kiwi? So for Waco's game that I played in, I rolled like socialite to set this up, and in the end, he turned out to be like a doctor medic who was grumpy and was chasing popularity because he was a hobbyist archaeologist or something like this. So yeah, so we'll see. You can see how you can just like interpret it in a very different way. So yeah, thanks, Bella. Yeah, feels a bit weird saying that I'm on your telly. Just in terms of like being on television, it's quite a strange concept, I guess. So yeah, so these are basically just to spark your imagination. And so if we look at one of them, let's say like Enforcer. So Enforcer, you are gruff, reckless, sacrificial. Your headstrong nature found you work in the security industry, whether in law enforcement or as a private bodyguard. So this gives you like a little bit of like, okay, who is this type of person? And then for your background, each of these backgrounds have usually 2 questions. So in this case, how were you recruited for this line of work? And how do you react to escalating threats? So just by answering those 2 questions, you automatically think, okay, whatever my answer might be helps me a lot with going, okay, how do I act in different situations? And then after that, you can see there's actually some mechanical things for your character sheet. So for the enforcer, you add +5 to your body save or to your fear save. You -10 to your intellect. So a little bit of stereotype stuff going on here. So if you say you roll the character randomly and you have skills that might not match this enforcer, then you can swap skills in and out. So that's another thing that this pamphlet talks about a little bit as well. And then in this case, this doesn't happen very often where it actually says to add particular items. And then you've got this trauma response here. So in this case, make a panic check at disadvantage. And each time you suffer a wound. So how this works is that you'll have your class's trauma response. So let's say you were a Marine class and Enforcer. You would have the Marine trauma response as well as this one on top of it. So in this case, once you go over that threshold for a wound, then you also have to do this panic check at disadvantage. But as you can see on the one below it, this background, there's no extra trauma response in this case. So it's quite fun to also add these other things in here. Yes, it stacks. Yep. And which is kind of quite cool, but I find that there's more responsibility on the player to remember that, because, I'm sure we've all played games where, the trauma response, you're like, oh yeah, we forgot to do the trauma response in that situation. So now it's like, okay, here's this extra trauma response that not all backgrounds have. So there's more responsibility on the player to be like, actually in this situation, I have to do some sort of trauma response. Divorcing trauma response. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, and of course it's optional, right? How do you mean by like support this? Like, I'm not quite sure. So another part of this module that is important is these notes. So this stuff on the left-hand side. So it sort of explains how you read them, like I did before. I don't know about like other trauma responses. I personally haven't seen a table of other trauma responses, but I'm sure people have like homebrewed trauma responses or okay, I'll note that, Waco. In terms of a table for them, I don't think I have seen something. I'm not too sure if someone else has seen something like that either. But this is the first time where I've seen something where it's like character building and it's also adding like significantly like building or stacking rather than creating your character in a completely different way. But yeah, of course I haven't seen a lot of this sort of stuff, and I'm sure that there's other TTRPGs that have done this sort of thing and modules in those for sure. So here's what I was talking about, like gain in addition, this trauma response. And then also there's a like there's also permission inside here to swap skills in and out. So if it is like you get the enforcer and you've got, I don't know, some skill that's not really that exciting and doesn't really fit this enforcer, or it doesn't fit your idea of what this enforcer is or your idea for the character, is that then you could just like swap those in terms of if it's at that same level of like trained or master or expert. It's like, okay, 1 for 1, we just swap those in and out. Especially if you've just rolled at random and then it's like, okay, well, these skills don't really work. So yeah, so these next few talk about swapping skills in and out and what sort of would be like fair in terms of skill swapping skills in and out. Yeah. What else? And then here is just, you know, a bit of an order of what you should do. So create your character first, then choose a background, and then basically add notes. So that's what we're going to do. Before we do that, at request of we'll look at 13. So where was that? At the top there. So service worker. So tired, flighty, you are one of the cogs in the system that keep the world running. You've learned to deal with all sorts in the social yet thankless line of work. What is your job? How do you react to unexpected kindness? So yeah, any ideas that come up for that, Waco, since you've since you've asked me? So for a service worker, you clearly, with your sort of experience, you gain this 5%, sorry, 5%, plus 5 sanity, plus 5 fear. So that's interesting. So this is a different one that we've had before, which is you have a few of these backgrounds, you add permanent minimum stress. So instead of having just 2, as you would normally, is that instead here you would have 4, and you would start at 4. So there's a few of these backgrounds that have that. And then you automatically gain linguistics. So yeah, that would be kind of a fun thing. Like I'd imagine if someone was working on a station providing services for people from lots of different planets or something like that, and that's their background, then that sounds like it could be a nice, interesting thing. Yeah, it could really suck. That's quite true. You know, I'm kind of imagining, I think Nobody Waked the Bugbear when they were doing I think it was on Prospero's Dream, they had that as like a hub, and there was like a bounty hunter office, and this person who's in the office like giving out bounties and organizing, like receiving bounties and also giving information about bounties to other people, then I think this might work because they'll be coming into like lots of different people, and that's maybe why linguistics might work. But yeah, the pumping sewage, yeah, I mean, sure, it could be lots of different things. It could be, you know, a tradie, as it were, like a tradesperson or whatever. So it could be lots of different things. So one thing to note that I haven't shown yet is at the very end, if you're rolling for this, so you can see 19 and 20 here, so you might not quite see it behind me, but you've got, this is Android backgrounds. So if you roll 19 or 20, then you would roll, in this case, a 1d5. So, and you have more specific Android backgrounds. And you have, of course, like, I think this is pretty common anyway, like this non-Android allies make fair saves. Yeah, the Interstellar Megaman, that's true. Yeah, the art's quite cool. I like this sort of style. So this was by we've got Prashi M, and so this was really cool. I do like some of their modules. I think he wrote, if not contributed to, Akigara, which is really cool. Yeah, I've mentioned that I have played Akigara and also used this Android background. Sorry, the Walks of Life pamphlet for that as well. So Android backgrounds, you've got cognitive. So this is, in my mind, I sort of imagine like C3PO automatically. Discontinued, which I think would be quite a fun character in a campaign, just because it talks about like these two questions, like why do you not receive support, and how have you how have you been maintained? So whether that is you maintain yourself or you have to go somewhere special, that'll be quite cool. Neural sleeve, so that could be quite fun, and I know a lot of people want to run campaigns that are sort of in this area as well. Then you've got synthetic, and then you've got like a more like utility Android. So what you'd do is that you'd have like a Teamster, and then you would get this Android background for the Teamster. So that's the important part there. Rather than going Android, who's an utility Android, it would be more fitting into one of these other classes. So, yeah, so that's that note there. So Android is being reworked to be a background rather than picked as like a class itself. Okay, so I'm about to roll like a random character, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer before I do that. So I think I might do like a random character with a random background, and then come up with some notes for it, and then take on any suggestions as well. And then I'll definitely do one for the Android as well, which would be quite fun. Actually, I will go back and do it again. Always forget that you can't like use sort of like web page navigation here. All right, so we'll create a player character. We will randomize, and yeah, we'll go Teamster. It'd be kind of interesting. I could have gone random class as well. So confirm. All right, so next part is we'll do some rolling. So we will roll a d20 for the background, for an 8. So an 8 is, okay, this hustler. So I've had hustler before, so I can at least talk to that a little bit. So I'll just chuck this in the notes here. So if anyone has any suggestions about these questions, then I'm happy to add them in. So just to make it clearer, we've got hustler, who is charming, slippery, and calculating. So bribery, forgery, and networks. You are always on the hunt for the best deal. What tactics do you rely on to get your way? And what kind of connections do you know? Yeah, exactly, with the botany for sure. Yeah, that's all right. Let's go with it. Let's go with like exotic plant salesman. So maybe that's his like original background. So exotic plant salesman. So he might be called upon if there is like someone wants to steal some like exotic plants from someone who, and maybe that exotic plant offers some sort of like health benefits or something like this. It'd be quite fun to play someone like this, almost like I'm sort of imagining this like art thief for plants. What tactics? All right, so what tactics do you rely on? So with botany, I think I'll just sort of like focus on botany first of all. Let's go trinket. Kukri. What is that? I don't even know. Oh, knife, right. Okay, well, this kind of fits with his botany, right? So kukri is sort of like huntsman knife. Okay. So maybe, let's say comfortable with new planets and environs. And then patch biohazard support. Okay. All right. So biohazard, maybe like, yeah, like focused, maybe expert. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I like that idea. So expert. Nice. Exactly. All right. So let's try and incorporate some of these. So I was thinking expert with like poisonous plants, or at least or knowledge of. We had charms her way through knowledge of plants. Yeah, I imagine like on many stations and things like this, plants would be like very rare to find. So trying to get his way or her way in some places that with a plant, or even if it was something like really cool, like even if it was like a carnivorous plant, that could be kind of interesting, where like it's like, oh, here's this really interesting plant, I'm your friend type thing. So that could be quite fun, like gifting plants, weird exotic plants. Cook, yeah, sure. So with the knife, so kukri knife. I have got that correct, right? Yeah. From the poor, okay. Gurkha soldiers. Okay, so like weapon and utility, survival. Okay. So yeah, this kind of like for me kind of fits really nicely with this like comfortable with new planets and environs, right? Like survivalists. Okay. Also has this like camping gear as well, water filtration. So yeah, survivalist. I would say probably pretty independent. I would say perhaps. What else? Vibe shitty. Okay, that's kind of thing. It's kind of like a lumberjack feel there. Yeah. So I think, this charms thing that could fit nicely into the tactics. Connections. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing here, because it mentions like charming, slippery, and calculating, and bribery, forgery, and networks. So maybe, other botanists, illegal, like exotic plant trade, knows, because I'm kind of imagining this character, if they, thinking about using plants to their advantage, and especially if they're like poisonous and almost being like an assassin, that could be quite fun. But yeah, kind of like can easily get around in that case. So we'll go on to some of the mechanics. So we've got +5 for intellect or speed. I think intellect kind of fits a little bit better with this character. So I'm not really sort of into like maxing. So I'll just put an asterisk there as the one that I changed. -10 fair. Okay, interesting. Swap a skill for rimwise. I think piloting fits, like going to new planets, but maybe rimwise is what I wanted, right? Yeah. So gain skill like that. So that's done. And then gain an item that costs 1k or less. So what have we got that's kind of interesting around like 750k, or 750, I should say. We've got 5 rebreather. Rebreather could work. Not too worried of this, to be quite honest. Pet, maybe? No, pet's too expensive. Maybe rebreather, like in case they wanted to like go underwater or something like that. Like, you know, getting some plant life underwater would be quite cool. So yeah, that is a Walks of Life speedrun almost. Those are the things that I had to change there. So it was just this intellect, fair save, rimwise in for something else, and then some item. And then of course answering these questions. But as you can see, like you can get quite a lot from just, you know, a couple of questions plus whatever items you have, plus the trinket and patch. And in this case, like the items were really good. Like this has suit fits as well, camping gear, rebreather, spanner. I mean, spanner maybe not quite, and then but particularly like the kukuri works really well, and then yeah, biohazard symbol kind of fits in a little bit as well. So yeah, there we go. We have a exotic plant salesman / survivalist / new planet. What would you call it? New planet colonist, I guess. Yeah, Walks of Life, any percent. How do you mean, like recommendation percent, do you mean, or something else? All right. So out of curiosity, if anyone's curious, this is the one that I created for Waco's game, which was this doctor scientist, and he basically was this cranky old celebrity archaeologist. You know, he had this like publishing media company called Wombat Wisdom. There you go, Melly, if that's there's your Australian part incorporated. Oh, the percent. It's true. Yeah, maybe I need to do all backgrounds for that. So yeah, this is the other thing that I did, was that this was the background for Socialite. I think I did this. So I made this how, like, I made a living showing people what they wanted to see regarding human history. I do my best playing the strange discoveries of the history of ancient humankind. Not always accurate, but how would his audience know? How's celebrity life treated you? given you a career that didn't expect, and but people are starting to care less and less about humankind, has fallen on hard times, and saw that tracking people could become handy to bounty hunters. And because he's a surgeon as well, is that, yeah, he's got this Hippocratic oath. So will only, would only, like, I think in that game, he only stunned people with his tranq gun, and that's it. Or sedated, I should say, or tranquilized. Okay, let's do another one. So this time I'll do Android this time. So we'll go create player, and we'll go randomize. So this time I'll do a random class. So we've got a scientist here. And then instead of rolling a d20 for all backgrounds, let's say I rolled like this 19 or 20 already for Android backgrounds. And we'll do one of these. So go over here, dice, we'll do 1d5 or 4. So we have this synthetic. So now we have this synthetic scientist. So this would be kind of interesting actually here. So just sort of the layout a little bit here. So synthetic and uncanny, codependent, rational. Sounds like some sort of maybe lab technician is coming to mind. Designed as a cheap replacement for human labor or companionship, you have the uncanny appearance of a human while allowing internal programming. What is the purpose of your model? And are you corporate owned or built by an independent creator? So if anyone has any ideas, then they're more than welcome to add. Purpose of the model. One option could be like that lab tech. What else could be like? What else have we got? Okay, we've got some interesting skills. So we've got like religion, hidden knowledge, obscure. Ooh, okay. So lab tech to like alien researcher. What have we got? Scalpel, which is pretty standard for a scientist. Cybernetic diagnostic. Okay. Right. So maybe or Android. Lab tech is a good idea. Something like that. Yeah, for sure. Exactly right. Android researcher, maybe. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So goes into like hazardous regions. You know, if we're talking like radiation, or there's tons of modules and pamphlets that include some areas that are not ideal for humans. Duct tape, okay. Oh, and 0G, that fits even more with 0G, I think. So I think that even fits better into what you're saying. Nuna. I think Nuna, you're playing our online game, right? So what else have we got? We got Trinket. Okay, 10 by 10 tar. Okay, nothing quite comes to mind for that at the moment. Viking skull. So that would be on the patch. It could be you. Thought it might be. Yeah, maybe the Viking patch kind of links into like the mysticism, perhaps, or the theology. Maybe there's like some religion at this point of time that is like harks back to some ideas around the like Vikings and things like this. Yeah, 10 by 10 meter tarp. Quite large. Hopefully it folds. Yeah, I don't know what do you even do with a 10 by 10 meter tarp? Like all I can think of like is to like collect a whole lot of like things or collect a whole lot of samples together and just putting them and wrapping them and transporting them. Maybe that fits in kind of nicely with this like collecting and collecting samples. And puts into the tarp. Corporate owned or built by an independent creator. Temp camp, yeah, sure, for sure. I think, I'm not too sure why, but I don't think like mysticism, theology, and xeno-esotericism fits with a corporate thing. So I think this would be like independent creator, like built for their own purposes, like sort of like, you know, their own built for the creator, maybe by the creator. Man, my typing's terrible today. So I think that kind of fits in a little bit more with that. What else? Anything else I would add here? Yeah, I think that works out quite well because it's like the companionship as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. The xeno-esotericism is always quite fun. So obscure beliefs. So yeah, I wonder, like, I'm struggling to tie in like what would be some examples of like hazardous regions that they need to collect samples for that also works into like xeno-esotericism. Like it's almost like trying to, I guess like we would think about them as like legends and myths. It would be almost like, oh, there is a particular culture of people who tell stories about something, and then it's your like the creator here is someone who like goes after them, so like kind of finds out more about them. So that could be quite fun. Okay, so we've got +1 to +10 to one stat, -10 to another stat, and +30 to fair save. So so this is actually works out quite well for a scientist. So unusually for a scientist class, you got 51 fair, -10 sanity, so probably a little bit lower than many cases. So that's done. That's done. All right, stats. What would be quite good for something that goes into these hazardous areas? Collection of samples, understanding the world. Maybe I would go +10 on intelligence and then -10 on combat. Yeah, I think I would go with that. And a trained skill. Okay, so I need to add another trained skill. So I'm not too sure what would kind of add here. I mean, archaeology would fit pretty nicely. Collection of samples could also be like chemistry as well. Geology could be kind of interesting. I think personally, archaeology kind of works quite well here. But yeah, we have a character. Cool. So this is yeah, that codependent thing is quite cool here. So I'll add actually this synthetic. So yeah, so that's an example of how you would build this Android here. So you, of course, like notice that there's no like extra trauma response in this particular one, but it still would maintain the trauma response in this case of the scientist. So you wouldn't get this Android trauma response. So I guess that's another thing that you'd have to be a little bit careful about, where, and of course, like you could probably even play that trauma response if you really wanted to, like if you wanted to add it. So yeah. So what else? So would anyone like me to create another character just to show off another background? Because I'm definitely willing to do that. I'm definitely happy to do that. Go back here. So I haven't shown like all of the backgrounds. So some other kind of interesting ones, like that I quite like the mechanics of, but I'm not too sure whether I'd like to play the background of someone like that. So for example, a space hauler says make fair saves at disadvantage when not in a ship or transport vessel. So if you're playing, I don't know, using this character when you're on planet, then you're automatically having to like do disadvantage for fair saves here. What else? Conscripted is quite fun. Like I've made a couple of characters with that. There's this Corpo shell, which is fun. Disciple. Yeah, Scrounger. What else have we got down here? Yeah, this one's always quite fun, this unretired one. So, what made you come out of retirement, which is that sort of classic trope of like a lot of, I would say more like crime movies, but yeah, there's a bit of that as well. So that's a bit of walks of life. I hope that was a bit of fun. So an extra note about androids is that there's a few extra optional rules that they add. So you can decide whether they need to breathe, sleep, eat, or drink, of course. They also have this concept of like charging the android. Also, fire and radiation damage is at advantage, and take corrosion, electrical, and EMP damage at disadvantage. So you can see how just from that, it might change how, you'd have to be a little bit more careful potentially in some places. And then it talks a little bit about recovery. And then, yeah, talks about like recovery of wounds as well. So yeah, so that's probably a good 45 minutes about walks of life, but hopefully that's kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure you can find this on Itch and Drive-Through RPG. And it's like super cheap. I'm pretty sure it's like, I want to say like $2. I'm pretty sure it's pretty cheap. So yeah, cool. The next thing that I wanted to look at was yeah, that's right, this module called So You've Been Chump Dumped. So this is a module that got recommended to me when every so often, like on the Mothership subreddit, I sort of go like, oh, recommend me something every so often. And I saw this. So yeah, spoilers if you if you don't want to watch. But yeah, I tend to read a lot of these things and then often I'll play them a lot later if I've forgotten how it works. So let's start with like the main, like the initial introduction. So after being scammed and ejected into the void of space, you and the other marks lucky enough to have your own vac suits are rescued by a gentle gravity-like force guiding you to a passing research ship. You find it in chaos. What saved your life? How many of the crew are still alive here? What was the Morningstar project? Is there a way off this thing? And just what exactly is that pink mealy paste coating the walls? So yeah, so this one's quite fun because you know, if your players, like if you're like trying to link between sessions, this is something that if your players were thrown out into space, like for whatever reason that came out as a story point at the end, is that this, it could actually, like, this could pick it up, where they, you know, slowly get drawn into some sort of other ship, and they have to figure out what they're doing on this one. So yeah, so the general idea here is that sort of like animal research, they've got this carnivorous sponge nicknamed the Morningstar, and is able to use its powerful gravitational pulse, the pool, to absorb other test subjects and grow enough to burst its cage 2 days ago, and quickly wreaking havoc. And so, you know, limited crew, so there's some NPCs here alongside some lab animals. And of course, I know that for many people, like, violence for like animals in general it might be like a veil or a line. So they've actually here, they've got some suggestions here. So you can say that the lab animals are never aggressive, and they are making their effects more like a puzzle. They're maybe more of like a synthetic robot type thing, or they are segments of the Morningstar itself, so that merely pink paste mimicking an animal. Or you could just straight up just change them to being some sort of like strange and unsettling alien creature, rather than some of like the suggestions where they are more like well-known animals. I'm trying to find an example here. I'm trying to think where this is. So that's for the, here we go. So you got some creatures. So this is what I was talking about. So if you're not sort of keen on violence towards sheep, chicken, pig, cat, cow, chimp, lobster, lizard, dog, rat, then yeah, of course you can sort of change these around. And I know when, you know, different ways that you can do that where it sort of moves away from someone's veil or line. So where to start? So I think the best thing to start with is opening the pamphlet. So this is the background here, talking about the company that's owned by, studying a genetic capacity to generate a gravitational force between different organisms. So they're aiming at turning animals into imploding bombs that could clear a striking colony. So yeah, there's some striking colonies in Mothership, you know, Picket Line Tango and a few others. What else do we have? So you've got NPCs, the labs, the lab animals. You've got this pink film, the paste mentioned before. None of the survivors were involved in the experiments, so they don't know really what's going on. And then there's like a security chief that knew about the emergency broadcast frequency. Yeah, and then it talks about how the players will arrive at the ship by drifting straight into its hull, clambering along it, and gently pulled back in if they lose their grip. They find an open airlock to docking bay and 1 being the room number, a severed hand gripping the manual override. Slipping inside, they repressurize it. So this is this sort of rudimentary map. So they come in through here. And then with these like locked hallways, you can kind of see how they might be funneled sort of to go check out 7 and then go around like 2, 3, 9 or 2, 3, 4, like into this direction first. And then we've got vents as well. And then we've got the different rooms. And then, yeah, we'll go up to have a look at like running in this. So track what room the Morningstar is in throughout the game. Okay, so you got to mark, right? Okay. Roll 1d10 to determine its initial location. Re-roll if this is 1. Of course, that's where the players start. Every 10 minutes, roll 1d10, pick a room, determining what they will do over the next 10 minutes. So if you rolled a different room than where it is, it will move 1 room closer to the rolled room along any path, somehow circumventing locked doors. Okay, so the Morningstar can't go through locked doors, but I imagine it can use vents. If you rolled the same room it's in, it feeds off screen on escaped lab animals. Okay, mark that as it has fed on the track below. Okay, so like fed. Okay, so this thing evolves. Okay. Okay, so that's like the gaining tension, but I guess the players don't really interact with this until they actually meet it in combat, I guess. Mark it as fed on the track and roll or choose an evolution. Oh, it gains. Okay, so it's not in order. So you mark it as fed, roll the dice, say it comes back as a 7, attacks gain anti-armor. So I guess penetrating. Cool. That's kind of fun. I haven't seen that before, like depending on random rolls for the locations of an enemy, then making it evolve in some sort of way. Of like, I guess I might have seen like more like rudimentary evolutions, but I haven't seen something like this where, you know, you roll it and you go, okay, like this time it gets piercing, this time it gets 25 instinct. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Very cool. Where do we go? So there, marker is fed. Evolution gains after it has been fed 5 times. Its pull begins to work on the hull, threatening to tear it open if used in the same room too many times. It gains no more evolutions. Okay, so it can't get like crazy. Although I'm sure with 5 evolutions, it's probably going to be crazy. Anyway, after the Morningstar has moved or fed, actually, I'll make this a little bit bigger, just in case. So yeah, after the Morningstar has moved or fed, tell the players that they feel the pull along with anyone else on the ship. All good, Waco. Nice to see you, and thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for your input as well on the characters, so much appreciated for that. And yeah, have a good one, and no doubt we'll chat very, very soon. See you, mate. Yeah, for those who have maybe just turned up, so I am looking at a module that is a one-shot called So You've Been Chump Dumped. And it has kind of like a cool entry point where the player characters are sort of thrown out into space for some reason, and that might tie into like a previous session that you've had, and they get drawn into the gravity of this particular ship, which is as a result of like the enemy particular module, and then they have to figure out what's been going on. So they know nothing about the ship. They're going in kind of a bit blind. And probably, I wonder whether they would actually go in with a loadout anyway. So I'm just looking at the running part and going through like what's like every so often and things that a warden needs to keep track of during this time. So yeah, after the Morningstar has moved or fed, so this is this pink paste thing lined on the walls, this like genetic experiment. Tell the players that they feel the pull, so this gravitational force, along with anyone else on the ship. A silent, nebulous force that physically draws their body in a given direction. What happens depends on how far away they are from the creature. So yeah, so if you say the creature was in room 5 and you guys are in room 1, is that it might like push you along into the second room, or at least towards it, I guess. So if they're in the same room as the creature, they are interrupted by the pull, like a storm wind or sudden fall. They must each body save or be moved one range band closer to where the Morningstar now enters the room. Okay, so it's like it goes from, I guess, like close to adjacent or something like this. Next room, everyone's inner balance hiccups as the pull causes them to lean or even stumble towards the Morningstar, as if they were being shoved or the floor tilted. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I guess it's like makes people wonder why that might be going on. And then if they're in like some other far room, they feel a soft pull, almost like a gust of wind or a muscle spasm, nudges everyone towards the Morningstar. And then the Morningstar, so this is like the main enemy here, a large wrinkled pink mass, like a shriveled wad of gum, okay? A product of the company's experiments, countless little pores dot its surface, expanding and contracting in predictable patterns, offering only glimpses at its back. Ultra-dense core. Okay. Black, I should say. Black ultra-dense core. Okay. Interesting. Right, it's almost like you have to peel off this pink stuff and it's really hard. Would you even realize it's there? That'd be kind of hard. It rolls or glides across almost any surface, tracking victims by body heat, pulverizing them and spraying their remnants out of every pore. Wow. Okay, that's a bit savage. No sensory organs, mouth or limbs, just weighty flesh and endless tiny orifices. One occasionally yawning into an impossibly wide abyss when it pulls in a victim. Feeding grants it even more evolutions. Right, okay. And then it talks a little bit about what happens. So if there's a pull, every creature must body save, deals 2d10 to adjacent, drawing a part of them into a paw and crushing it. That could be nasty. So yeah, I think people would lose limbs in that situation. Eject. So it vents a pink mist of pulverized flesh, temporarily blinding anyone adjacent, forcing them to make a sanity save and making the ground around it slick with gritty film. Okay. So definitely some points of, like, you know, making it very difficult to get away. So they get pulled in close, pulled adjacent, and then making it very difficult for people to get out. So maybe using like strength or speed, like to forcing people to do a check here to try and get away, and maybe doing it at like disadvantage even. Although, yeah, it could be a bit nasty here. There's also this crush thing that I haven't seen mentioned. Or pull or eject. So crush must be just like a general combat action. And then wounds, 3 wounds and 40 health. So pretty beefy, I would imagine. Pretty tricky to actually kill this thing. And then we've got, what else have we got here? I've got some NPCs, so they will be around the ship, I imagine. And we've got some effects. So I guess some rooms, there might be some effect. So some ways off. So call a corporate shuttle. So in the gene lab, send a distress signal from... Okay, so find the emergency frequency. Then go to the bridge. Use the controls there to open the docking bay or the cargo bay when the shuttle arrives. Okay. Hidden VIP escape pods. Okay, interesting. So they are in the personal quarters. Okay. Get key in the garden lab and increase power to 8. Increase power in like the engine room. All right, and then cryosleep. Get the hand of the CMO. So who is that CMO? Am I missing that? CMO, is it like Chief Medical Officer, maybe? I'm not sure. I'll find out a little bit later. In the lab, activate cryopods. Okay, cool, very cool. Yeah, so that looks like quite a bit of fun. I think that would be kind of interesting, and I really like the idea of the start, where you're just drawn. If you're just floating in space, you just end up being drawn in to the ship, and then from there, you have to sort of work out what's going on. And I imagine you can find some things around in the ship, but judging by the fact that you are like scammed when you're scammed and ejected. So I'm not too sure whether you'd actually have your stuff if you were like ejected by someone else. So that would be, yeah, I would probably play that you don't have a loadout, but you would be able to find out a lot of things in there. All right, so yeah, so that is So You Chump Dumped. Yeah, I might have to play that when my players, when Nyuna is not playing, since you've just heard me talk about some ideas that I've had. But it looks like a lot of fun, and like I said, in terms of the very start of it, it could be a cool way to link to some missions and feel like even if like the most natural thing for the end of the session, like another session, is that your players are stuck in space and they're floating around, then that could be a way. It could be a way to like draw them back in and have like a good way to sort of like tie those things together, especially with that like gravitational pull type thing. So yeah, that is So You've Been Chump Dumped. What else have we got? So created a couple of characters. We've looked through this module. But yeah, if anyone's got some questions, I'm happy to answer as well. What else? So one thing that I did see the other day was on the Mothership subreddit was scenarios centered around beings in the unconfirmed contact reports. So I'll zoom in a little bit here so a bit easier to read. So I'm looking for scenarios that are based around creatures from the unconfirmed contact reports. On unconfirmed contact report, there's like a module of, I think maybe like 50 like enemies or situations. It's not always just enemies. Particularly, I'd love to see a scenario focusing on the hyperspace raiders. But in general, too, is there something like a list of scenarios that focus on one of each character being in there? So Waco, who was just on before, actually, he wrote a scenario that could adapted to fit the engineer. So if you're not familiar with unconfirmed contact reports, it's this one. It's been out for, this was out before I came to Mothership, so it's been out for a few years at least. And so the idea behind it is that each horror is a suitable obstacle for one or more sessions. And it's really basically to spark your imagination. And it was a good way that they introduced like stat blocks for enemies as well. And so for the mention here, so the engineer, so we can take a quick look. So so the engineer is this like creepy sketch. So eyewitness sketch of the engineer. And so we've got this stat block up here for him. The engineer works as a wandering ship's engineer, killing others and taking their identities in space. There are thousands like him. Oh, there are 1,000 like him. That's a lie. There are none like him. He waits, blood full of stimulants, whilst others fall into hypersleep. He crawls out, reborn in an idealized birth for an avenging angel. Then he opens the airlocks. So each of these like unconfirmed contact reports, they are very much like that. There's no like explanation of like where he's from. It's very much just to spark your imagination for something. So a lot of these are like, this testimony, for example, or in other ones it could be like here they've even got this note left behind or a journal entry, for example. So there's some quite fun inspiration here. So going back to this, so yeah, wrote one to adapt to the engineer. Waco wrote, I think, one inspired by the succubus as well. And then, yeah, talked a little bit about Ages of Sin. So that is like a bounty hunters one. Bounty hunters module that includes scenarios, but I don't have that one. But it does look like a lot of fun. But yeah, so I thought this person mentions, so Crackerjack mentions this, let me see, Hyperspace Raiders. So we can check that one out. So yeah, so this is the one he's talking about. So we've got Hyperspace Raiders, and they got a pulse rifle, and they can also teleport at close range, which is kind of interesting. Most crews spend their time during hyperspace jumps in cryosleep, mind closed to the void, while an android, blind by design, monitors the astrogation computer. Those who stay awake in the hyperspace are given a glimpse of the ultimate truth, conflicting with the falsified machine memories built to keep us from our destiny. Hyperspace Raiders are those who embrace this glorious path and seek to invite more to join them. How they are able to locate, let alone dock, with ships in hyperspace remains a point of speculation. And then we have this extracted automated audio log. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Look at them, look at their eggs, so delicate. I love to see them so fragile. Please return my left arm to me. Please return. Sorry, I thought, okay, that's okay, dear. Let's hatch some chicks. Yeah, like some of these entries are like really weird. Some of them that I can't quite put my finger on, like how that might influence my way of thinking about it. But yeah, that sounds like a bit of fun. But yeah, this could be something that you could use. So Hyperspace Raiders, they're like, I imagine them as pirates, kind of, trying to steal valuable things of different ships or different stations. And this teleport at close range is kind of interesting as well. So I think, to me, this is kind of telling, like, my first sort of ideas regarding this would be like they breach the PC's ship. I think that sort of suits more. I think that's probably the place where you would encounter them first. And then what else? Like, breach the ship. Like, my sort of key questions, like, what's valuable? What's valuable to them? Like, it's not, trying to find some sort of reason why they would do this to the PC ship. Is it a person? Could it be a stowaway that the characters don't even know about, but that is on the ship trying to maybe avoid these? Is it some like object that they're about, that they want? And like, why is it valuable? So, are these sort of like a bounty hunter group where they're doing it on the behalf of someone else, or are they just like pure just raiders and like they're using it for themselves? So yeah, those are some like very initial ideas. So if we go over to like the operations manual and we look at maybe some text that could be kind of interesting to see if there is a story to weave into here. So So the horror we kind of, so the manifestation, I guess we kind of know-ish. So let's take a look at like rolling some dice. So we've got a D100. So what's the transgression? Like why? So the transgression, I guess, could fit into this like stowaway person. Like, transgression. Let's go with stowaway. They're kind of interesting to me. I'm not too sure why it came up. So stowaway on PC ship is trying to escape the hyperspace raiders. Stowaway managed to get aboard, not abroad, get aboard at the most recent station. And what else does it say for transgression? I always forget what pages these are. I'll just go like 20. Transgression. Someone knowingly or unknowingly awakens the horror. And then the transgression was that the stowaway, so that the PC ship, that the stowaway was had escaped, and the raiders are trying to find them. All right, omens. What signals are there? So things that could cause signals. So the star themselves. The PCs could like detect the hyperspace raider ship. What else? Take the form of nightmares and prophetic visions, a loose trail of victims or rumors. So maybe there's like rumor from the previous station, or maybe some like an announcement, perhaps, that about the escapee. Each serves as an early warning system, builds tension. So then, like, if the stowaway is found, then maybe like their own like so stowaway and stowaway behavior. Yeah, because like, do they know they can, they being the hyperspace raiders, can, you know, board ships in hyperspace? So I would probably say no, as they might encourage the PCs to like try and escape, try and get away as quickly as possible. What else have we got here? Finally, omens act as clues for the mysteries to be solved. So a key thing is like when do the raiders board? Like are the PCs awake in this situation? Because they might go into hyperspace and then that's when the boarding happens, and then they wake up when like there's some sort of like emergency yeah, some sort of like emergency system, like emergency alert system that wakes them from cryosleep. Yep. Cool. All right, what's next? Manifestation reveals its true form. First time they get a glimpse. So I think this is just like when they first see, like really come into contact. Like first contact, and especially when the hyperspace raiders start using this ability of like teleporting. So using their teleporting power. Cool. What else do we need to note here? Big moment for the first time, get a glimpse of the horror and its terrifying glory. So I guess it's kind of like a mix of realizing someone in hyperspace has boarded the ship. Makes it real, gives the players a form. Manifestation is often what people remember the most. So yeah, I think that teleporting thing is probably what people remember the most. Think about it, smells and the sounds. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing, like, you know, human, potentially. So like, do we even know if these, like the hyperspace raiders are human at all? Yeah. They do have pulse rifles, so they would be human-like at least. You know, how have they, you know, if they aren't human, like how different are they? I think that would be really tricky, I think. Yeah, because they are using pulse rifles, but of course, like you could make this, you know, it's just for inspiration, so you could make it something else as well. What else have we got here? Once manifested, the players are on the defense. They are being hunted, attempting to survive just long enough to make it to the next act, so banishment. So once banishment, attempt to destroy the horror. I mean, the most straightforward thing would be, you know, in combat, I guess. So in combat, or you know, putting them out an airlock. Although I'd probably argue that they would be pretty smart about if they were human-like. And also, what's their yeah, so their instinct is 55. So, you know, if you're doing any like intellect type things, you would say that 50-50, or maybe a little bit likely that they'd be able to beat any rolls if you needed to do one. But banishment can take many forms. Not always simple. Killing may need to be appeased. So of course, like banishment could be combat, could be like giving the stowaway, perhaps. Act as perfect time to ramp things up, really make the horror the player's problem. But they could be hidden as well. So I'm not too sure how that would work, like having enemies and yourself trying to find something that is hiding and moving around the ship. That could be quite tough. Not sure how that would work. Learn that the horror is at their doorstep. I should really have this zoomed in. Cannot be ignored. Yeah, well, you can't ignore people boarding your ship. Whether the players banish the horror, run away, or die trying, the horror is simple in this last phase. Slumber. If the players are successful in banishing, the horror goes dormant, waiting for the next transgression, I should say. So, yeah. So questions really about the stowaway. Stowaway. And why? I think that's like a really key question to the slumber part. Like, you know, are they working for someone trying to find things? Are they, if they're working on other people, or like, why is the stowaway so interesting? You know, does the stowaway have some powers or something like this that they might be interested in? Maybe it's some sort of like recovering a stowaway that is meant to grow up as a hyperspace raider, if I was thinking like of a child. So yeah, I'm not really too sure how that would work. So yeah, so there's like some bones to something here. So I think some different. So if I was to like further develop this a little bit more, would be next steps, questions about the stowaway and why. Ship design would be really important here, I think. Like, how do you make it? Because the players will be familiar to their ship, the hyperspace raiders won't be familiar to the ship. So how does that play out? Especially when you're like defending or doing combat in your own ship. I think that could be tricky to get that right. I think, yeah, also the omens. I think the omens, you could do kind of some cool things with the stowaway. Like, the introduction is that you've left the station, you hear some bumps or something like this in one of the lockers or something like this, and then the stowaway, and the stowaway introduces the problem. And as a result, there's that transgression. The omens are part of like the stowaway behavior. So, you know, this particular stowaway is talking about like the dangers that they are in, and, you know, appealing to you for your help. And then another omen might be detecting a hyperspace raider ship, like where it seems to have like the same trajectory as your ship, at least like the same heading. And also there might be some sort of like announcement that comes to like nearby ships to the station, from the station, talking about how the recovery of the stowaway. So I think the omens, you could do something kind of cool here. I didn't think it would be that great, but actually looking at this now, there are a few things that you could do here. When do the raiders board? I think this would have to happen in cryosleep. Yeah, I think this emergency alert system is probably the best way. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I think I'd probably test a few other ideas before going with this exact setup. See if there's something else that would fit nicely with the Hyperspace raiders. So most crews spend their time during hyperspace in cryosleep, mind closed to the void, while an android blind by design monitors an astrogation computer. Those who stay awake in hyperspace are given a glimpse of the ultimate truth, conflicting with the falsified machine memories built to keep us from our destiny. Okay. There's something interesting in there, I think, that particularly that sentence. This idea of like a glimpse of ultimate truth. Maybe, yeah, this kind of opens some questions like what / who is the stowaway? I think that's kind of an interesting question. Like they could manifest into they could be they could morphs into a monster. So it could be kind of an interesting, could be something interesting here with that. Hyperspace raiders are those who embrace this glorious path and seek to invite more to join them. So it kind of asks, the stowaway is kind of an important thing here. You know, I would say that they are part of the raiders and for some reason want to keep them as part of the raiders. And then it talks about this mystery of how they're able to locate. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that you could do in here. And these are just ideas off the top of my head. That could be quite fun. Yeah. So for those who are still here, if you're still interested in maybe like earlier we're doing some character creation with a pamphlet called Walks of Life. And then we looked at, so you've been chump dumped, this module, which looks really fun. And then we're looking at this like hyperspace raiders, I should say, from Unconfirmed reports. So yeah, if there's something else that people want to have a look at, I'm definitely open to those. But other than that, I'm quite happy to sort of finish there. I'm kind of losing light as well. So I think in 20 minutes or so, I'll have to turn the light on in the room that, doesn't make it look so good. So, so yeah. If no one has any questions, then I will check out a few other unconfirmed contact reports. but in about 5 minutes, I'll end the stream. So, so I actually looked at some other unconfirmed contact reports that were quite cool previously. So another one was this For Your Eyes algorithm, which is kind of funny, where if there's some interaction with an electronic device or even androids, it is infected with some sort of virus. So this is like a Trojan horse spyware that spreads like a virus. So that could be kind of fun to add, although it's not really clear about like what it does. So you could always like incorporate it into like a campaign somewhere, some way. So that was one of them. Another sort of highlight of unconfirmed contact reports, the Greys, which seem kind of interesting. It has this great art here. Squishy, like two wound and 10 health, but they have this beam weapon, 10, which sounds absolutely insane. So they are survivors of incursions into several restricted spaces and have reported contact with abnormally flexible, jaundiced figures figures whose long, delicate, multi-jointed fingers are recalled with particular. So yeah, they sound like super creepy. Could be kind of a bit of fun to add to something. Then the next page, there is this Hatchet Man, which looks absolutely savage. Has a combat of 90, scythe 1d 100 damage, or a heavy gun 5d10 damage. Yeah, basically there's only running away is probably an option here. It looks absolutely insane, this particular thing. But it could be like a sought after weapon for some corporation or group. Then we have, what page was that? The next page, actually. We have Headjackers, which so there's like some sort of like infection here. So the phenoptic nature of the universe is apparent. So I think this was something to do with like sleeves, I think. So much so material to leave so much material to others defies beautiful, perfect logic of market. That its upcycling scheme has become autonomous and cancerous. Could never have been predicted. So you have this spinal column repurposing of dead flesh, hijacking decaying nerves and muscle. So yeah, really kind of like creepy infection zombie type thing. Yeah, I thought that was quite fun. The next one's quite fun as well, which is called Husks. So they are vegetative clones that are formed after the host was absorbed, leaving only a husk, very much like the cloned, but not quite right and off in subtle ways. So that could be an interesting thing to come across. Yeah, that one looked like a lot of fun as well. Then we had Hyperspace Raiders that I talked about before. And then we have this Incubus here that looked pretty nasty. Has like acid blood as well. Yeah, the eggs lie dormant for decades, microscopic, crawling through the veins towards the brain. So yeah, super creepy. Could be something that maybe bursts out of an NPC or whatever. But yeah, combat is super high, so I'm not too sure how you deal with it. And then we had 35. So we had this Possessed. So it happens at random, from poor miners to eccentric artists to the rich and famous. The signs are hard to notice, but present. They move like a puppet on a. For a second, you see something behind them in the corner of your eye. So yeah, there's kind of like a bit of a creepy, creepy puppet. It talks about like the skin moving oddly, the smell of rot and shedding, eventually vanishing, and sort of like creepy, but not necessarily dangerous. So yeah, that could be kind of an interesting thing to play around with. Then we had 39, the Sea of Silence. Is a vicious and precocious. No, vicious and I don't know how to pronounce it. Viscous. Sorry, yeah, viscous and vicious. Forgot about that. So yeah, viscous and vicious photoplasmic organism which conquers every body of water it comes across. It drowns its victims without killing them, stripping away all sense of self and awareness. So yeah, that could be super. It could be quite fun to put that in somewhere. You know, if it was like in a body of water that was part of a module somewhere that someone like comes into contact, and then like, you know, this organism starts like creeping up the finger. That could be kind of weird. Sea of Silence. Then we've got Sally in the Screen. So yeah, as a result of fatal illness, a grieving mother, unproven technology forced in desperation, the girl lives after a fashion. The organic matter is forced into the ordered lines of code of a computer. Code of a computer code. Lines of code of a computer code. Okay. And it is agony. So yeah, this is kind of interesting for me because I was watching something on Netflix called, it's an animated show with 2 seasons called Pantheon. And this kind of reminded me of the story where humans, like human experiences and personality and their memories are uploaded and digitized, and that's sort of like the main core of that that show. And this kind of reminded me of this, is that you might find like Sally in like different terminals. So she drifts through data, attracted to unsecured terminals, the dirty and forgotten places of the net. So I think this was kind of cool, and also works in with another module called Across the Web. So that Across the Web module has some sort of like, you have like communication devices, and it has like ways of how you communicate, and goes into that a little bit more, rather than going, oh, you just communicate with your bosses or something like this. So yeah, so that one looked like fun. The next one is a bit grim, which is Throat Leeches. So yeah, so this like very disturbing piece of art, which so yeah, they have this bite across known space. The worst conditions breed a most unpleasant, persistent, and distinctive parasite, spending most of their lives as eggs, passively photosynthesizing in stagnant water. Then, when swallowed, they bond with the throat. Ugh. So yeah, so I think this would be kind of interesting in like new colonist type sessions. Yeah, that would be, yeah, super creepy. And yeah, so you have this like body save or be infected, and then also you have like, you know, if you are infected, you like more leeches reproduced as a result. And then we had the next one, which is Unpersons, I believe. Yeah. So the sort of like invisible yeah, the breath on the back of your neck, invisible fingers running over and through your possessions, everything left subtly disturbed in the wake. And yeah, in the wake. Laughter flat, nasty, the laughter of a board inflicting cruelty. Yeah, this kind of like more kind of like disturbing kind of thing. Still physical, still real, able to grip, tear, and caress. A victim of experimentation, failure to teleport. Okay. Oh, that could fit in with the stowaway, maybe. Maybe the stowaway is invisible. And that the experimentation was when they were going through hyperspace or something. Maybe. I should actually write that down. Unpersons, unconfirmed contacts reports. Yeah. Then we had next one, which is vitalizing field. Yeah, a field of energy that causes biological life to rapidly recover from environmental stresses and trauma. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting one, I thought. Kind of a bit creepy. Art is sort of a bit creepy as well. And it sort of goes through stages. Like you can see the sort of like baby, adult, elder type thing. Yeah, I thought this was great. Vitalizing, and then the white vine. A super evolved bio-enhanced vine can grow several hundred feet in 24 hours, capable of explosive reactions and attracted to movement. So if you can imagine like something taking over a ship here, yeah, this is something that would be perfect for that. You know, of course, as a result of some sort of experiment. And then, surprisingly, the last one is they say, you from somewhere else. Every almost terrible thing, every dark path not taken, every hideous wound and shattering loss you avoided. Yeah, this is kind of creepy kind of thing. Like, you know, confusing people about, okay, it looks like them, but it's not. It's almost like an identical twin that's not quite similar. And then at the top here, it talks about, you know, it's about like the character stats. So this could be some sort of like psychological thriller type thing where you creep out other PCs in the party. That could be a lot of fun. So, and then the last thing from unconfirmed contact reports, there is on the back here, there's this quick horrors table. So you have, it's a, what, 1d10. You got anomaly, brute, guard, hunter, swarm as your sort of like base horrors. And then of course you could make any changes. They've also got like this how to use guide, which is really cool. Yeah, and this is like right on the very back page of unconfirmed contact reports. So if you're looking for a way to create a horror, but you want just something to start with, then this is kind of like a good foundation. And also, like if you wanted to adapt something else to this, then that can give you some inspiration, or at least some like framework for like what you might want to do. So like for the guard, for example, is that, you know, you've got this small groups of enemies type thing. And I think one idea that I had was maybe like the husks which were, these are unarmed, 2d10 damage, 35 combat. They have this howl, and so you can be stunned. And they are these vegetative clones, so that could work out quite well for this like swarm type thing at the end. Oh, sorry, these guards, I should say. So equipped with a weapon. So in this case, they're not dangerous, and maybe they're protecting something. You could play that as well. And of course, like the husks have that howl. Yeah, they have this howl action, so that could then be fit quite well into this part where it says, but make up for it by being able to call for backup. So that's a kind of a cool, fun idea. And that's part of, all of these are part of unconfirmed contact reports. So this is like quite an old, this one's been around for a while and quite fun. And the reason why I was looking at that was there was this subreddit, a post in the Mothership subreddit talking about, are there any like actual scenarios, of which there are a couple that have been inspired by them, but not sort of like saying this is the exact character from unconfirmed character reports. But yeah. So yeah, I've been streaming for like nearly a couple of hours now. So if there's anyone who has any questions, I'm happy to field any, like Mothership related. But apart from that, I'm going to finish the stream. So thank you for everyone who came, and I hope it was a bit of fun. I realize it was a lot of reading from me, but I think in the future it'd be quite fun to do more, maybe some more streams, and perhaps doing a bit more like creating as well. Part of the initial release with the big box, I think so. So let me see. So like Tuesday night games. So the core set, yes. So in the core set, and I imagine in the deluxe set, it would also be in there as well. So yeah, so this is quite a common thing for people to pick up. I think you can pick it up separately as well. Maybe it's not under modules. Maybe it's under something else. Man, there's so many more in here now. Maybe it might be under extras. Nope. They put it under core rules. Yes, okay. Yeah, so they put it under this core rules section. But of course, like the core set, especially if you're getting the physical, if you're wanting the physical copies of these things, then it's pretty good value. In terms of like what's extra, releasing hard copy, so hard copies of just the contact reports. It looks like, yes, they've got this physical copy option, and that looks like it's in stock. Yeah, sorry, it is a bit small, I guess, if you're on the phone. I'll go like this maybe to help. So it looks like they do send out physical copies of this. Yeah. What else do they sort of consider in the core set? So you got the Shipbreakers toolkit, which is for like ship combat and stuff like that. Yeah, and they give you some like standees as well. which is quite cool. Oh, they give you dice too. Yeah, so as you can probably gather, like I do most of, well, actually, yeah, almost all of my games online. So I tend to just pick up PDFs rather than anything physical. I would like to have things physical, but yeah, where I live, it doesn't make sense to sort of send it to there. It would be like a little bit too expensive and a little bit annoying. So yeah. So yeah, that's the unconfirmed contact reports. Does it actually say? Let me see here. When did it actually get released? Does it actually say? Okay, got released in 2023. So this is, yeah, looks like they might have had a couple of versions. Not sure what ones. Yeah, not too sure which, like how many of the versions were out for sale. But yeah, so yeah, some great illustrations by lots of different people. Yeah, so Luke Gehring appears on a lot of these for sure. Ellen Girding, yeah. So yeah, unless you guys have got any other questions, I'm going to scoot. But yeah, hopefully that was like a nice introduction to different modules, to looking at creating characters, with, we looked at Walks of Life, which is this great 2-page module, which is very, very cool, which just gives extra backgrounds to characters. Then we looked at this pamphlet module of So You've Been Chump Dumped, which is a great name, which talks about PCs floating in space and then being drawn towards a ship and then entering the ship and then playing out the module, which it looks like a lot of sort of research experiment gone wrong. And then we looked at that question regarding like unconfirmed contact reports, I should say. And then I did like a very like quick idea of like how you could use the hyperspace raiders with the sort of like stowaway idea and how you might do the tombs framework. So transgression, omens, manifestation, banishment, and slumber. But yeah, well, thanks to all to joining me. I'm going to sign off now unless there's any other questions. And yeah, it was good fun. And hopefully we'll do one of these again, not just for some sort of subscriber milestone, but hopefully in the future for doing something else as well. So yeah, thanks a lot. Have a good one, and have a great weekend, and enjoy your games whenever they might be. Yeah, all good. It was a pleasure. Yeah, feel free to ask more questions. Please bother me and distract me. I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. Yep, see ya, Nyuna. We'll see you very soon, no doubt. And yeah, have a good one. Bye.